Right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming back to Red Hat Developer Corner. And joining us today, Jeremy and I, is Max and George. Maybe, Max, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Max Anderson, just back from vacation, learning how to use a computer again. I'm a DE and co-leading Quarkus at the last couple of years, and that's me. Georges, what about you?
Yeah, so my name's Georgios or George Andrianakis. I work as a software engineer on the Quarkus team. I've been doing that, I don't know, probably lost track. What is it, 3-4 years now? So yeah, that takes up all my time these days.
Great. Well, you'll notice I have this big R on my chest because nobody on the Quarkus team has sent me a T-shirt.
We send to everyone who made a commit.
Yeah, send a commit.
Oh, okay. I get it. All right.
Hey, you guys, we can plug you. So these guys are frequently on Quarkus Insights, right? Or actually, Max, you're always on Quarkus Insights, right?
Sometimes, most of the time. But yeah.
Most of the time, okay.
Yeah.
So for those who joined that think we're going to talk about open telemetry and microprofile, we kind of had a little glitch. We're actually going to talk about unit testing today, so I hope you stick with us. And we're going to talk about the Quarkus unit testing that Jeremy's been teaching me. So we'll see how that goes. It's not in Rust, right? So why don't we jump right in? I'm going to share my screen and see what happens, right? So tell me if you can see my screen. Yes, good?
Yep.
All right, so for those who are interested, Jeremy and I stuck our code up here. So this GitHub Developer Corner stuff, and we have a bunch of basic Quarkus unit testing stuff there. So what we're going to do today, though, is we're going to walk through a little project and look at how we can add some unit testing to that. So all we did here was we went and generated a Quarkus project to get us started. And the only thing that it's got in it so far is we added, Rest Easy basically with Jackson, and then we added some Hibernate panache to it. We created a simple database that we're going to use. We're going to do a very simple book example here, and we added some properties to get that going. But you'll notice we have a model, one entity in there, just a simple book, a repository pattern, and a service, but we don't have any resources yet to access it. So what Jeremy...
is it just me, or is the screen very small?
Oh, is it? Okay. Sorry. Let's figure out how to get this. Is that better?
Yeah.
Is that bigger?
Bigger font is better, but yeah.
Is it? Okay. All right. Let me know if you can't see something so that I can...
yeah, maximize that piece.
Yes?
Yeah, maximize that piece. It'll be easy.
This part here?
Just maximize your center tab, your code.
Like that? Is that better? Okay, so all we're going to do here, sorry, I'm going back here. We're going to add a resource. So Jeremy, stop me when I mess something up. So what we want to add is a book resource so that we can add, get to this code, right? Now, why did it do that? Nothing ever works on the, so let's add a path to this. That's it. That's all we got so far. So let's inject our service because we want to get to the service. So Jeremy likes using services. He tells me so that he can add validation to it. Is that right, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's easier to test it.
Yeah. Okay. And what do we want to test first? Just to get all the books that we stuck in the database for the initial project? How about that? You know, I can type about 80 words a minute if I include the backspace. So what do you think? That'll work? I haven't added any testing yet. So the way I normally test is I'm going to build it and run it. And I don't do this unit testing in Rust kind of thing. So
No testing needed in Rust? Is that the thing?
no, because the compiler yells at you about every little thing. So it really makes for good code, but like triples your time to product.
But you can test in production that way too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's no exceptions, Max. So just think about that.
Nice. So just
All right. So we're doing this live coding. So Quarkus, maybe one of you guys want to explain what live coding is?
well, so we have in Quarkus we call it dev mode, where when you run Quarkus in dev mode, Quarkus dev or Maven Quarkus dev or Gradle Quarkus dev, or you run it from the IDE, it will just run your app, and then it will look for changes. Whenever a request comes in, it will check has changes happened, and then if there have been changes, it will compile and you get the update and restart. And it's different than like normal like reload, where because we only do it when it's necessary, where others tend to rebuild every time there's a change. So it lets you like play around and do changes, and it's only when a request comes in you actually you don't have to deal with compile errors before you're ready for the change to happen. So yeah, that's the dev mode of yeah, what we call live editing or that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also awesome.
It is pretty awesome because I you know, normally I'm wearing a C++ t-shirt and we don't do things like that there.
No, you have all the time in the world, right? Because
Yeah, exactly.
You have more time doing development. Yeah.
So I went ahead and pre-created a couple tests the way I would test it in Postman. So I'm just going to send that out, and sure enough, we get our 4 books, and those 4 books were imported here into the database. The database is not actually, it's actually running in the dev environment now, right?
You probably yes.
Yeah.
That's another feature we have in Quarkus dev mode that you can add, like I'm not sure what you have here is Postgres or H2 or something, but if you just have a dependency, oh yeah, so here you see that only the prod mode is configured, but in in dev mode or test, there's nothing. So what Quarkus says, hey, you have an added entity and you have a data source. We will create one for you in a dev service. So if you run H2, it'll be starting at H2 in process Java mode. But if you are doing like Postgres or Oracle or MySQL, we'll actually start up a Docker container or a container using test containers. And again, this is one of the things that just magically works, and you're surprised when you see it the first time, because like you normally have to, we have to have a separate dev instance and configure it and boot it up before you run. But all that's happened is all managed by Quarkus. So that's the dev service. You
have Docker Desktop running. Pop up your Docker Desktop for a second. Everybody can be able to see it. So if you haven't used Quarkus Dev Mode before, you can see test containers is spun up and a database, which is really nice. I don't even use H2 anymore. I used to use H2 for everything, but Dev Mode you can just use Postgres, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason to use H2 anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because I the last time I used it was with some EAPs. Was it EAP? A couple of years ago. Yeah. So I almost never use it. Everyone uses Postgres, I think, pretty much.
Oh, I was using H2. I've used H2 forever, for a long, long time. I mean,
really? Okay.
Yeah, but it was. Dev mode just kind of kills it.
Or so let's
need for it. Right?
For any production stuff where you're using a data, like you in production, you're using a real database. There's no need for H2. H2 still has uses, like if you write in a CLI or like some small thing, but for testing, you might as well just use the real thing because it's so easy now with test containers and dev services.
Yeah.
So Jeremy likes to test everything first. I'm going to keep blaming him because he drags me into this stuff. So what we're going to do is let's create a test harness for this. So all we're going to do here is add a Quarkus test, right? And we're going to, do I need to add the test HTTP endpoint? Yeah, I think so, right?
You don't have to, but you can, yeah.
Okay, just for completeness.
And the cool thing, Quarkus test in the background is going to spin up another instance of Quarkus running on a different set of ports, right? So you don't have to pull your running server, and these tests are going to run in the background while you're coding. It's a really, really nice feedback loop.
Yeah. So, and this is it just works, and one of the things that's nice is like Quarkus is very much focused on performance and using a little resource as possible, and that is for production and the test runs. In dev mode, we're assuming you have a laptop or machine that has a bit more room, and there we run basically an instance for you to play around with, like a play area, and then a separate one for the test, so you can you don't step on each other's toes.
So I'm while we're talking, I'm starting to write this test, and I know this part, right? Rest assured, and content type JSON. So what is this bit here that I'm going to start adding?
Yeah. So also, if you're following along and you haven't used Rest Assured before, it's bundled with, or it comes with Quarkus out of the gate. If you're using any of the Rest Easy stuff, which is any of the web stuff, it's going to pull in this library Rest Assured, which is a really great library that makes it super easy to test any kind of web things you're doing. All your CRUD stuff, and you got a static import, so you can just use given, and it's a really nice API for creating tests. And Hamcrest matchers are pulled in too, so the matchers are really nice.
So, anybody read the three-body problem yet?
What? Sorry?
Nobody's read the three-body problem yet? The science fiction book?
Not that I recall.
So I wanted to read these books by Zixin Liu. I think that's how you pronounce that. It's called The Three Body Problem. Before Netflix made a series out of it and ruined it, so it's really pretty good. It's a pretty good science fiction series. So anyway, so what I have here now is what I'm hoping is the exact same thing that I'm doing here in Postman, right? So I run this and I get my titles, and I want to get all the books back, and I'm just testing that it has these authors in it. That looks good, Jeremy?
You just need a semicolon.
That's true. Oh, you guys and your semicolons. Okay. So in C++, the curly brace goes here. You know, how many times have we had arguments over that? So let's run this test and see what happens. This is the part where I get a lot of red or something on the screen, right? No, it ran. Wow, that's great. Look how easy that was.
Yeah, no errors, no exceptions. It's like Rust.
No errors, no exceptions. That's right. So let's add some other stuff here. And for time's sake,
maybe you want to go and add an error to your test just to check that you actually are running the right thing.
Oh, I'm really good at adding errors to things. So let's.
Never trust a test unless you've seen it fail.
Yeah. Never trust a test unless you've seen it fail. All right. What if I put a misspelling in here? Ooh.
Hey, there we go.
And what kind of cool error message did we get out here? So we said we got a collection back containing the right names, but you know, our comparison here didn't have this section in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't tell you that the key was different, but that you didn't get.
No, I mean, no. The error message makes sense from a rest assured perspective because it's looking for a key.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Yeah.
Jason
right
doesn't match. Yes. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you see that? Or is it too small?
Still small. You can see it.
Okay. It's too small. All right, we'll run it again just to make sure that it worked. All right. All right, cool.
Perfect.
All right, let's add another method here. So let's do the rest of the CRUD operations, right? So let's do a post.
Yep.
I love IntelliJ, or basically all the JetBrains tools. You guys use VS Code? What do you guys use normally?
Whatever worked that week. But yeah.
Okay.
VS Code, IntelliJ. Yeah.
Did you see the big giant bug in VS Code yesterday?
No.
About it stealing passwords?
Nope.
Oh yeah. Yeah, look that up.
What's that all about? I didn't hear it either.
There's some kind of you'd have to look it up, but there's some kind of issue where you can steal passwords from your VS Code environment. So when you're logging into things with VS Code, you could potentially be giving your passwords to somebody. I don't know if that's on all VS Code environment. I don't know if that works on Mac, Windows, or everything else, or it's just on Windows.
I just looked it up. Extensions can be malicious, right? So, like don't trust anything you download from the internet, basically. Anything has a plugin. Yeah. So apparently the way that the communication works, the extension
Mhm.
can listen in on you typing in the password to another extension. So yeah.
So I'm gonna add a put here also. So we want to create something, and now we want to update it, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's use this good old-fashioned try catch, because Rob writes a lot of stuff with errors in it, and the compiler's not going to stop me here. What do you think? Invalid parameter exception? Yeah, why don't we do that? Return response. Sorry, you guys have to watch this. I know you're in this all day, but
Oh, it works good.
yeah. Get message. Go. Add that. Yeah, let's add that. Let's return out of there. Let's see, response. Status dot bad request dot build. All right. Okay, so we just added this code. I'm still running, so we should be able to go over to Postman and actually run this, right? So we should be able to do a create. So I'm going to create one, and sure enough, I added it, and we want to update that from, well, we got back to 5, right? So we're going to modify that. We're going to say change War of the Worlds to Invisible Man. Oh, what did we do wrong here? Oh, because we did the book ID, the book. So let's test this. Let's actually write a test for it. What do you think? See what's happening here.
Sounds like a good thing.
That sounds like a good thing, right?
Writing extra tests for debugging is an underrated way of debugging things instead of
Mm.
saying point, right?
All right. So what I really want to do is a create and an update, right? So all right. So we're going to write a create function next. What do you think? All right. Guys, help me out here where I'm messing up something.
What are you you're trying to say without a transaction?
Yeah, I'm going to do this create here. Let's create a different one. So William Gibson's another author that I like. So let's do that. Anybody ever heard of this book by William Gibson, Neuromancer?
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah, it started a whole genre, right? So that whole genre with, what do they call it? Some kind of techno punk thing, right? I think that's
Cyberpunk, right?
cyberpunk. There you go.
No, I'm not a fiction fan myself.
Oh, what do you usually read?
Non-fiction.
Like what?
History,
Ah.
politics, stuff like that.
Okay. So right next to me on my desk here, I have a nonfiction book. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. That won't put you to sleep at night.
I can't make out the title.
Oh, you can't? It's a history of the Sasanian Empire.
Oh, okay, excellent.
For me, it looked like a good night. What's it called, lullaby story? But
Is that to get your kid? You don't try Good Night Moon. You go straight to the history of the Sasanian Empire. For the kids.
but Neuromancer, I just remember there was like a Amiga game.
Was it really?
I just remember Neuromancer. I didn't read the book. First, I learned it from a game. I believe it's like Amiga or something. It was like a long time ago.
I think probably the last like fiction I read was probably like some Scandinavian and murder story, stuff like that. Really popular around here.
Yeah, I have to alternate between fiction and nonfiction, but but the nonfiction I read doesn't necessarily make me look smart.
Doesn't necessarily. Sorry, didn't get you.
Doesn't necessarily make me look smart, 'cause it's like football tactics, right?
So let's see if we, you know what? I'm thinking that I'm going to have to write a test here for to test. So we actually have a test that we did the create, but what about testing it with a what would help if I put a new in there? 8 equals, right? So let's actually test that. So this should work by creating a title with an author. So that's different. So we're going to do Neuromancer by William Gibson, and then we're going to look that up by title.
I just looked it up. It was 1988. I'm feeling old now.
Was it really?
88?
Yeah.
Is that
Like, the
I thought
game
Neuromancer was before that. Yeah.
No.
the game came out in 1988.
Oh, the game came out in
Yeah,
98.
okay.
Yeah, the book is from 84 or something. Yeah.
All right. What are your recommendations on how to make the test fail first? Since we want it to fail, right?
Yeah, just assert a wrong, assert something you should be
Yeah,
wrong.
it's code.
Yeah.
X. How's that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just something to make it fail.
Uh-oh.
See, there you got a problem, right?
Yeah.
No problem. Test doesn't fail. It's all good. It works, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
why?
it's like for us, we can test in production.
Ship it.
So ship it.
Yeah.
Now, is is this going to run different if I rebuild it? So I stopped the live code and rebuilt it.
No, it shouldn't make a difference.
It'll be the same.
Should be the same. Wow. So why do we think that that's going to work there? Any ideas? Jeremy, anything?
Nah, just run it.
Oh wait, you don't. Oh, you do. Yeah, you do assert. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I did an assert here. We got a 201 back. Neuromancer. We did a query. We shouldn't get the title back though. That should be
Okay, yeah, I see what you're not performing a get anywhere.
Given content type, param, then yeah, you need to say get when.
Yeah, there's no when, get, then.
That's what.
There's straight then.
Ah.
Yeah, the rest assured DSL doesn't save you from that. That's happened to me a few times. So you when.get, and that should be.
Another thing, the only thing that maybe I did, I mean, I love rest assured. I think it's a really great library. The JSON path I found, it took me a while to get used to their JSON implementation when you're really parsing through complicated stuff.
Yeah, that's no fun.
Yeah. I don't have a really good workaround for that yet. But
Nah, neither do I.
Now we failed. Actual 0, because we don't have anything in the get, right? So what we really want is the ID, right? That just got generated.
Yeah, I think you used the ID as the path for.
Yep. But what we really wanted was this query, right? So do we not have we have the ID, but we didn't actually, we have a query param here. So what do you guys think? Put you on the spot.
Well, what does book service .find actually do?
So book service.find. We can pass it a query and do the repository find all. And we're going to do a like whatever the query is.
Okay. But then I don't see how does the query represent like name or whatever title is. Okay. Okay. Sorry, the title's on. It's already in there. Okay, I got it.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So what we need is a resource that we need to fix this, right?
No, I think I mean, if the database is populated properly, that should work.
Do we need to fix this?
Okay, so
Well,
how about
param.
Okay, yeah, neuromancer, blah blah blah. Okay, but hold on. So you're running. Okay, you have get. Oh no. Okay, I see what's going on. You basically the way the test is written now,
Mm-hmm.
you have no guarantee that your get this get book with query param is running before create. And actually, if you look at what IntelliJ is doing, it's running that one before the create.
So
So what you need,
what if we do this? Can we add order?
yes, you can, but you need to add an annotation to the test itself, where you say, I think it's the annotation is called like method order or something like that,
Yep.
or method. Yeah, I got
How about this?
test
Yeah.
method order. There you go. Yeah, and then you need the in here, blah blah blah. That's not it. It's some like I don't remember what the name is. Like order annotation or something like that. Yeah.
All right. So we actually need to add.
Unit 5 test method order.
Yep.
Okay, so it's called
Right there.
method orderer dot.
Yep. Order annotation dot class.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we can add this as a second order, right? Number 2.
Yeah, you don't. So you added 1 to create and 2 to.
Test
yeah.
it.
Okay, so that should probably work. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got the experts on here, Jeremy. Whoever can watch this later could have watched this fixing this for a long time, right?
Yeah, well, I've looked at so many user provided applications where they're like, this isn't working. It's Quarkus
Yep.
problem. So
Yeah.
I've learned to spot things like this.
It's not a Quarkus problem. It's a user error problem, right?
Well, it sometimes is. I mean, but
so let's add the delete, and because I'm kind of running out of time, I'll copy a delete in here. How's that? So, because you guys don't want to watch me write that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say deleted by ID. So what we did was we did a test get, we did a test post to create something, we did an update to it, and we did a delete, right? So if we run this, we should be able to test all those things. In Postman. All right, so we did all that stuff in Postman, but we don't like Postman anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this delete to our test. Right? That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and because we just tested this with a particular order, tests normally need to run out of order, but if we're going to do something like this, we're going to add some order to it. We're going to say void remove, because we don't want to just call it delete. Given content type, what would be application, JSON, we'll do that. And then we'll say when dot delete. Oh, too fast on the tab, right? And we think it's probably number 5 because we didn't, because we only had 4 when we inserted into the database. Then status code. And what's the status code on a delete? 204, right? So now we should be able to create it, make sure that it's actually there, and delete it all in order, right? voila, it looks good. All right. So, but what if I want to test this in a container? Is that an integration test? That should be pretty easy in Quarkus, right?
Sorry, you want to do what?
Kind of an integration test.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Yes, put an IT on the end, you'll be good.
Quarkus integration test.
Yeah.
Like that. Should be that easy. Now, can I run that in live mode?
No.
Okay. So I have to stop this. Do I
Well,
need to rebuild?
You need to package the application for this
Mhm.
to work. But if you can try and run it, I mean, if you try and run it now, I think the error message should be fairly clear and say that you haven't packaged the application and therefore you can't actually execute this type of test against it.
And it might be worth mentioning the difference, right? Like the rest assured testing is actually testing the endpoint, which is you consider it as like a black box testing, but it is still running in like dev mode, and we do a bunch of shortcuts so things are easy. When you run the integration tests, the intent is to run like a fully packaged application on its own standalone and then test it from fully outside. And that you can do with a packaged jar, in a container, or also a native binary, right? Because a native binary you can't test in this dev mode, and also not a jar. So that's the reason why we have this separation.
So I got out of the dev mode. I did a build. I'm going to run it here just to see what's going to happen, and I'm going to put. So it's going to create a bunch of stuff here in Docker. What's going on there?
So it's the same. Okay, so I think what
this is going to go away, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, well, it starts test container. I mean, it does the same.
Yep. The
test
same
container.
thing. Just right. So what I would really need to do is package this up, and then run this test, right?
Actually, how about try like a Maven clean first, and then run this, and that should fail, because if you've built it prior, this would work. Okay, so now just try running this IT from IntelliJ, and that should fail. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and the error message should tell you that you haven't packaged the application. I mean, yeah, if you go down, let's see what it say. Well, I can't make it out.
Oh, I'm sorry. How do I make that bigger?
Make sure the test is run after the Quarkus application has been built. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's fair enough.
So as Max said, basically the idea is that this is a process of testing a running application outside of the application process itself. So This is just like, it's like running Postman against the Quarkus application. Only in this case, the test itself also starts the application, whether that's a container or a Java, a jar, or a native binary. It doesn't matter.
So what if I want to add something to look at the test coverage? We can simply add Jacoco to this, right?
Yeah, that should work for the Quarkus tests. Yeah.
Well, and you have to, with one addition to your POM, it'll also work for everything else, right? Yeah, the first time I did that, because I have a mix of Quarkus tests, right? But I also will often test like some stuff in isolation. I remember being very disappointed for a while that I was getting zero coverage on things that I knew I had test coverage for, right? But it isn't But being a
What is
developer,
Coco there, Jeremy?
it's code coverage.
Just code coverage. So all I did was add this to the POM. And did you see how I accidentally started trouble the other day on the app dev COP? I put an article in there about why Gradle sucks. No comments on that.
A lot of people like Gradle.
I know. It wasn't actually an article about why Gradle sucks. It was just a comparison between Maven and Gradle, and it started this whole religious
I really like Gradle as long as I don't have to
conversation.
support it.
Say what?
I say I really like Gradle as long as I don't have to support it.
So what we ran here was all I did was I added Jacoco to the POM, and after I ran the test, I got this at the bottom here. So I'm going to cut and paste that into my browser and see what I get. Oh, well, I got a whole directory there, right? So we'll always go to the index HTML. So what am I seeing here? This is all the stuff that just got run. So the model got hit.
It's a lot of red.
A lot of red, right? Because I didn't actually run a test for everything. Right? So we did the resource, but we only hit a portion of the resources, right? The get, the create, the remove. Okay. But I can see my test coverage, and the only thing I had to do was add something to the POM file. That's pretty slick. I like that.
Maybe you want to show the continuous testing too?
Talk me through.
Yeah, so if you run Quarkus dev mode.
Yep. Hold on. Let me. So we could do this from the terminal, right? So
Yes.
we could do Maven Quarkus dev, right? So we could do Maven Quarkus dev. But if I'm a pointy clicky kind of person, I can do it over here and just find it and run it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you start up, it will just say something like, you see in the lower part, it says test paused. So normally Quarkus will start up being like normal. You can run in the, let's call it the play mode or dev mode. But if you scroll down, it says test pause is like resume testing. So if you click R or press R,
I did.
it starts running the test in the background.
All my tests just got run.
Yeah, you see it on screen. Now you can go into the test before and just like change the get the whatever the test were we failing.
How do I see which one's failing?
Yeah, well they're all green. So just fix.
Oh yeah, they're all green.
Yeah, change something like the title.
So
Right.
6, right? Because we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it should be picking up in below. Yeah. Oh,
There you go.
boom.
There you
go.
Broke it. Now fix it. It'll actually run super fast too.
Yeah. So what it does is, so this actually the fun story here, like when we did Quarkus first, or sorry, the first version of Quarkus, we had dev mode, but we didn't have the continuous testing, and 50% of the crowd, users said, "Hey, this is awesome. We can do all the experimentation," and then the other part said, "Hey, I can't do testing this way. I have to do testing first." So we came up with this proposal that we want to do continuous testing. So when you can be doing all this for fun, playing around, but you also get feedback immediately if you break your tests. Right? So it kind of allows you to have fun while also doing test-driven development. And what it does is, even if you had a lot of tests, it keeps track of what code paths are being affected. So if you have 100 tests, it should only run the ones that failed, or the ones that are affected. Like it tries to be smart on what running, so it doesn't run the full test suite all the time. You can also tweak and configure it to be a subset or whatever, but it tries to be smart. So it's pretty nice. But of course, if you're used to not having tests, then this is not interesting. But this might want you to have tests, because now it's not a big problem.
So I want to add, I'm going to add one more thing and then turn it over to Jeremy, because I like to add, I come from a world where everything's a printf in order to debug something, which is horrifying, right? But I learned this cool thing that you guys added here where we could get callbacks. And while I'm adding this, maybe you want to talk about what callbacks are? Jeremy or somebody?
What are you adding a callback for? Why do you want to add one?
I'm just going to add a callback that says what test methods I'm executing, because I couldn't actually see all that down in the terminal there.
Yeah, so this is usually used for like integration with other stuff, but yeah, nothing prevents you from like adding it to the application itself. But yeah, so this is similar to JUnits before each annotation, but I think this provides you a little more information, a little more contextual information, that is.
All right, so because I like to print stuff out, we're going to do this. I remember the days when we didn't even have unit. We just did assertions inside your code.
Sounds like fun.
And that was, 25 years ago, but it was just showing my age here. You guys really, this is really great. I mean, if you come from, most people nowadays, they're looking at stuff and going, oh, this is just, the way it should be, right? What you guys have added. But those of us that have been around a long time and had to do things, the hard way, walking uphill in the snow both ways kind of thing. Did I put the right? That's the wrong one.
Makes you think what we'll be saying in the next 20 years.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, this is really good stuff. I mean, I don't envisage yet, any, me telling the computer, hey, write me a unit test, but that may be coming. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Finally, a double colon. That's my world.
That's what C++ uses for what, virtual calls or something like
that. Everything. All right. Now we got to add something in here in this meta-inf package, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's not picked up automatically. Yeah, so that's it's a little manual.
Service, right?
Meta-inf under meta-inf service.
You know what? It went under .resources.
Yeah, that's what IntelliJ does that automatically. Yeah, so
how do I move that? I have to move that, right?
Yeah.
Move directory. God, refactoring is so nice. So I need a file name here.
The file name is the name of the class you're implementing, basically. The Quarkus test before callback.
Yeah, so I need a file name. So let's add a file. io.quarkus.test.junit.callback.quarkus test before each callback. Now I can put the name of the thing in there, right?
Yeah, of your implementation. Yeah.
Acme dot, hold on, this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. And I should be good with that, right?
IntelliJ seems to not like it. I don't know why. Is it telling you why?
No service provider. It doesn't make sense there. Let's refresh that. Let's run the test and see what happens.
Yeah.
Might be just some IntelliJ thingy. I think I saw it. So we said executing, and then the test, and then I printed off the annotations that were on that test.
Nice.
Very nice. I like that. Now I can see what's going on from so we could enrich this in a number of different ways, right? There's a bunch of different callback types. I like that.
Yes,
that's cool stuff. Okay, especially, if I'm integrating, I've written stuff where I've had to integrate with downstream services that you paid for every time, and even when you hit it in test. So Jeremy's going to talk about how we're going to mock some of that out. And I know we're right at the top of the hour. I apologize if you guys have to jump or something, but it would be great if you could stick around maybe a little bit longer. For Jeremy, you want to take over?
Sure. I'll go really fast.
Yeah.
All right.
This is what happens, when you stick somebody who's not a native Java developer in Quarkus. But what I'd like to say is, look how easy that was. That's
can you guys see my window?
You can now, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Oh, now you got to make it bigger.
Why is that? It's my entire full screen
Robert,
size.
I'm happy you liked it. I'm looking forward to your first contribution so you can have a new shirt next year.
Oh, right, I'm going to get a Quarkus shirt somewhere. Yeah, definitely.
All right, so the first thing I want to show, I'm actually going to start with WireMock because somebody asked to start with WireMock. So I've got an app. I've got Quarkus running in dev mode right here. And I have, since this weekend, the Premier League starts, I thought we would call an API, and I'm calling into an API to get Premier League fixtures. Fixtures. And so Saturday, we can see we've got, this is the results we're getting back. I'm making an API call. This is to API-football. And we've got, it's at Turf Moor, right? So it's Burnley and Manchester City. So let's come over here. Let's look at what this application is doing. We looked at a little bit of this before. So how's that? See that pretty well. This is pretty basic, right? Our path is right there, PL fixtures. I have a REST client API football service, and I'm really just returning that as a pass through, right? I'm passing in the parameters that the API wants. If we want to look at what the Quarkus REST client looks like, here we go. I've got a couple of things going on here. They require this configuration key. I've wired up where this URL is inside my application properties. This is a custom header that has my key. I've added that on the command line so that I don't accidentally commit that into source control, which I do kind of regularly and then regenerate my key anyway. And then I have get fixtures by date. This is just an interface, right? So Quarkus is going to implement this for you. I've got all these query params. This all looks pretty normal if you're used to using any of the REST easy stuff. So the way we test this stuff, I want to use WireMock. And what WireMock allows me to do is to spin up a Java server that's going to mock out my response and lets me control that response. So I don't have to ping against this API and pay for API calls while I'm doing my testing and development. So this is a Quarkus test resource lifecycle manager. So I guess I'll introduce two things. What a Quarkus test resource lifecycle manager does is this allows us to annotate one of our classes with this, where's my class? API for Premier League standings test. So I can annotate the test with that, and it's going to start up another version of Quarkus, right? So we mentioned before that in the background, there's one version of Quarkus running. Putting a test resource around it, the lifecycle is going to start up a second version. But it also means that it's going to make whatever happens there is going to be available here. So I've I've got this my WireMock proxy. WireMock server, we haven't used this. It's a really great utility. It's got a website, pretty good docs. We start up the server here. I'm listening on port 8089. And then what I'm doing is I am stubbing this out. So I'm going to intercept everything, and then I'm going to return a call proxied to the API service that I'm using, right? And then when I get a specific URL, I'm not going to return that. I'm going to return a canned response that I've got here. And this is my canned response. The way I'm going to know this is that we've changed Turf Moor to Main Road, right? So we're going to get the wrong answer back. But as long as that's what I'm expecting, then that will be correct. I mentioned that we've got Quarkus is running in the background here. Let's and then the lifecycle, it has two methods, start and stop, so it cleans that up. So our test here, where's our Premier League standing? The API football service test, and this I'm just testing. I'm just testing that my REST client works. So we can run this thing. Let's just run this. And I passed. So again, I'm expecting the wrong thing. So let's put this in. We were talking about earlier, we always want to see, make sure our tests, are accurate. So if I run it this way, I'm going to fail because I'm not going to actually call the API. I'm not going to get back the real number. I got back Main Road instead, right? And we notice so Quarkus in the background, we'll hit R for resume testing, right? And so in the background, we'll see our test will crap out, and it fixes so fast.
Jeremy, we lost your screen.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to that. Do you guys see it now?
No.
All right, better. It's telling me that I'm sharing. All right, let me. You guys see it now or no?
No.
No.
All right, actually stop sharing. Share again. Screen one, share. I got a little message that says I'm sharing. All right, there.
Now we can. There you go.
So we changed that back, and it's already passed the test. So that's how I test the REST client, right? So I've mocked that out. I've intercepted this call. You can also just mock, and this is also we'll begin looking at mocks. So now I want to test my my REST endpoint, right? The one that I'm looking at here. So in that case, I don't actually need to round trip that. I can just mock the API football service itself, right? So I can inject mock, tell it that it's a REST client, and then before my method, I am going to say Mockito when I call this method, then return, and I've got my own method for that, right? And so this is what I'm returning. So I'm just going to return this object again with the wrong. I'm going to return it with the wrong venue, right? And I mentioned earlier the one kind of gripe I have around REST Easy is that I think the JSON path is a little bit wonky, but you can get through it once you start looking at how it comes back. But it didn't work exactly the way. Maybe it's because I spent a lot of time working with Vertex, which I think has a really, really nice JSON implementation. So I found it a little bit odd. But what I'm going to do here is, in this case, this is also another version for REST Easy. I can also get the response out, and then I can just get the JSON out of the response, right? So I get response as string and get the JSON out, and then parse through my JSON because the JSON I'm getting back looks just like this. So it's a little bit complicated here. Where's my utilities test values? So this is the JSON I'm getting back, right? So it's a good bit of JSON, right? Nested stuff. I've got arrays in here, so some decent work has to pop through here. So let's run this thing. We can see the mock. And so we're working there. And again, this time I don't have to mock anything out. I just tell it to return it's going to return whatever I tell it to, right? So there's two different ways you can do that. We can do wire mock when we actually want to proxy to something, or we can when we want to test the REST client itself, we can use wire mock. Otherwise, we can just create a mock. So let's look a couple other mocks here. Actually, I want to stop Quarkus there. hop over to this project. So in this case, I have got, let's Quarkus dev, fire up Quarkus here. All right, and let's take a look at this UI I've got. So localhost, no longer Premier League fixtures. We're going to do hello. So I've got some hello, and now I'm returning some random hellos, right? So hello from a number of different languages, right? I've also got a localhost 8080 quote. So we get a quote, right? And we've got some random quotes, right? So we can pass back a few quotes. These are all coming back from the dude, but there are quotes from a few different authors. There's Walter, right? So we have a few different quotes. So for testing this, two different things we can look at testing here. The way that the REST endpoint looks, let's close this. The REST endpoint looks like this. At hello, I have two different services. I have a greeting service and a quote service. They're both fundamentally the same. I just have a list of greetings here in memory. You guys see that? And I'm just returning a random one of those things. And then quotes are the same thing, right? So I've got this list of quotes here, and I'm just returning a random quote, right? So I return in hello, I return a random greeting, and then in quote, I just format the greeting, the quote object. So it comes back like that. So test we're going to do here. The first thing I want to test is now I've got, notice down here my quote test, I'm going to get one of these random quotes back. And this is another thing I mentioned, the Hamcrest masters. This is baked into REST-easy. So I've got this REST-easy given when I get quote, and I can say contains any of Dude, Maud, or Walter, who are the three authors of these potential quotes. So basically, no matter what quote I get, I'm going to get one of these authors. I'm just making sure that one of these comes back correctly. Hello endpoint, I'm getting back random greeting, which is not part of my greeting service. I have a mock greeting service here. I've annotated with mock. It's in my test directory. So Quarkus is automatic, or Quarkus test is going to automatically substitute my greeting service with this object everywhere in my tests. It's good and bad, right? So one, every single test I run, it's going to use this instead. So I'm always going to get back this this random greeting service, right? Well, whereas in this case, I'm calling the actual object. So I can run that, and this will pass, right? Because I'm going to get back this random greeting, which is not one of the greetings in my actual resource. Another way we can mock things out is we can. So in this case, I'm going to inject my mock directly into the test. And what this means is I'm only going to have a mock of quotes service here inside of this test. So my other test was using the regular quote service. I was getting back a random quote from one of those three actual people. Now this one is going to use the annotated mock object, because that's for every single test case. And in this case, I'm going to need to train my quote service, right? So I'm going to say mockito when I call the method random quote. I'm going to send a new quote. And it's sometimes you eat the bear, and well, sometimes he eats you, and that's the stranger. It's not Maud or the dude or Walter. And so in this case, I will get my quote back here, right? So run that, and we'll get that quote. It's so there's two different ways, right? If you annotate a bean with mock like this, it's going to be injected across every single test that you have, right? So you want to do that if you know globally, I don't want to use this thing, right? And then if you inject a mock inside of your actual class, you get more control, right? So sometimes I want to use a real thing, sometimes I don't. This is more obvious, I think, if we start looking at Panache, right? So we've been looking at some database stuff. Look at the way you mock out Panache. So let's quickly, we will jump over to Panache test. So in this, I have a, look at two of these things, but let's start this up. Up. Saying, gosh. Get that started. So what Quarkus testing Panache does, I have two different greeting resources, which are two different ways we can use Panache to store stuff in the database. The first one is an active record greeting, which is going to use the active record pattern. It means that I have a, in this case, I have a get where I'm saying hello, but I pass in a name. If the name is null, I just return hello. If I have a name on the format, then I create a greeting object, persist it in the database, and then return hello name. And then I have a list all where I can call greeting list all. Panache makes it really, really easy to do this. So my entity, if you haven't seen Panache before, it extends Panache entity. It gives me all these kind of methods that I just called, like list all here or persist, right? I can also do all kinds of querying and stuff. So let's take a look really quick here. Let's say hello, and we just have hello, but then I can say, oh, right. So let's say hello, and let's say all. Let's see if I've got, and I've stored that in the database, right? But when I want to go to test this, let's say I want to test my active record greeting test. So one thing we can do, and this is a lot of times when we're testing, and traditionally I used to do a lot of this stuff. I mentioned I used to use H2, used to do a lot of this. I'm actually going to populate something in the database. We can do this in our setup method. It makes this really easy. Panache makes this really easy to do. And so in this case, when I call this endpoint, I'm going to get, if I call it empty, I'm going to get hello, right? That's expected functionality. And when I call hello all, I'm going to actually get one greeting because I've put one in the database, right? So I'm physically calling the database. This is really an integration test, right? But there's going to be one in the there's going to be a greeting in the database. So when this test runs, I'm going to come back with Christopher, right? So Christopher Robin got put here in the database. Yep. Now you don't really need to do that with Panache, and I think it's sort of you're really doing an integration test. You don't want to test Panache's functionality. You know that Red Hat wrote that and it's going to work. What you want to do is mock out your object, right? So now I have a different greeting resource test. And in this case, I'm going to mock out my greeting class. And I'm going to say, when we call list all, then return these three greetings. So then when I call this method, which is my front end hello all method, body contains string. I'm only testing for one, but I can put contains. I can put multiple contained strings, and have test for all three of these. The other thing, there's default values for all of these. So I'm not actually putting these in the database, right? I'm just mocking this object out, and it's going to say I've got three of these things. But then if I call something like count, which is going to tell me how many are in the database, it's going to give me the default number of 0, and there isn't actually anything in the database. If I wanted to see what was actually in the database, I can mock the class. I can tell it to return 3 objects when it's called, and then I can tell it to call the real method, right? So don't mock out this method, just mock out one of the methods I want to use. So this time, when I call hello all, I'm going to get one thing back because I'm putting one thing in the database, right? So I have one greeting in the database, which is Christopher. I've mocked this out. I'm not going to get Christopher. I'll get Pooh, Tigger, and Eeyore here, but I'll have one thing in the database. And I'm going really fast, so if this doesn't make sense, shout out, questions, yell.
What's the difference between a spy and a mock?
So a spy is just going to tell you that something got called multiple times, right? Or a number of times, right? So where's a spy? I have a mock resource. This is a different spy. So what I'm going to do here on a spy is, for instance, I inject a spy instead of a mock. And what it's going to do is just say verify that greeting service was called one time, right? Because I know I'm really testing my REST endpoint here, and I just want to know that the REST endpoint calls the appropriate class one time. I don't really care what comes back. So that's what we do as a spy for. And then one last quick thing, we'll show how to test Kafka, because this is really useful, and it's a really great piece of small reactive messaging. So inside of my Kafka test, I have a Hello Kafka resource, and this is a pretty simple resource. I'm listening here. What this is reactive messaging. I'm listening to a Kafka topic called Hello In, and I'm publishing to a topic called Hello Out. My method is called on Hello In, and what it's doing is it's taking the hello message and translating it to uppercase and returning it, right? Super, super simple. This could be a pain in the butt. I used to, before I found the in-memory connector, I used to use test containers to spin up a whole Kafka environment. That was pretty painful. This is really, really nice. So what we do now is, I mentioned before, we have this test resource. So I'm going to create a test resource.
Yeah, I think this is awesome because I used to spin everything up in Docker Compose, the database in Kafka, and with Quarkus, you can just do it all right there. You don't have to, you can if you want to, but I don't have to put it all in Docker Compose anymore.
Nope. So I'm implementing my test resource lifecycle manager. So I'm starting and stopping. And what I'm starting is an in-memory connector, and I'm switch incoming and outgoing channels. So I'm switching my incoming channels, hello in, and the outgoing channels to hello out. So what this is going to do is it's essentially going to proxy, or it's going to switch out the implementation. So I'm not going to fire anything off to Kafka. I'm going to fire it off to this in-memory connector. And then my test is right here. And my test, I've got my Kafka resource, right? So I'm going to have access to any of those objects. I'm going to inject my in-memory connector, and I'm going to get a sync, and then I'm going to send this in to my source. I'm going to say hi there, and then I'm going to expect this to come back in caps, right? So my sync is going to receive, and I'm going to get the payload. So the receive, get the first thing that I receive, and get the payload. So when I run this test, and there are a lot of other things we can do with the received, right? So we can do all kinds of things. Say, hello out. We can stream things. We can loop through all of this stuff, right? So there's a lot of things we can, a lot more things we can do than just get the payload, right? But it allows us to test really, really easy. So if you're using Kafka in your apps, it's a super simple, easy way to test Kafka. And I think we're pretty well over. So we've taken up everybody's time.
George, I know you got to leave. Any closing thoughts from the Quarkus team?
No, this is a great summary. The only thing I do have, like, you might want to show in like a follow-up episode or something like that. There's this new mode new testing mode that was released with Quarkus 3.2.
Yep.
We call it the Quarkus component test, I think.
Oh, I have one. I have one of those.
Oh, okay, cool. So
we didn't look at it. You're right. We didn't look at it.
Right, it's brand new. It's brand new. So basically, yeah, we're just like soliciting feedback from that because it's a very new thing. Like we have some ideas like where people might want to use it, but we really want to see in practice, like if it's useful or not.
Yeah. So just to recap what we just went over.
Here,
we did the novice testing. Basically that was me doing the. I'm new to the Quarkus environment, and I'm kind of novice at the testing. How can we get started? How easy it was to get started. I think we demonstrated that Quarkus just amazingly removes a lot of complexity from you having to get going. It just makes life really simple. That's what I really enjoy about it. And then we went into some more of the more complex stuff with the mocking and the wire mocking that Jeremy did. And I think the Kafka and the database stuff with Panache was, that takes us further. And you've got a component test, so we can close out with the component test.
Yeah. So here's the component test. So what this does, I've got two services here, a greeting service and a tumnus service. We both ended up with some C.S. Lewis references this time. We didn't practice that. We did not coordinate our C.S. Lewis. So the basic greeting. So the method, where'd that go? I don't need that.
Yeah, what do you got going on there?
Commits. What was that? So the component test, I have a greeting service. If I go to my greeting service, it has a Tumnus service, and it calls this Tumnus service on greeting from Tumnus. It just calls this Tumnus service quote. You can see that method. There's, again, just some random quotes that Mr. Tumnus says from the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, right? And we just get one of these things. So my greeting service is going to get one of those back. My greeting resource test, not that one. This is a component test. So we mentioned in a Quarkus test, we're spinning up all of Quarkus. In the Quarkus component test, we are not spinning up all of Quarkus. We are only spinning up the Quarkus CDI container, right? ARC. So I have mocked out my Tumnus service, and instead of returning one of the 3 actual options, I'm going to say, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tumnus. And this way, the test is going to run even faster. Let's just give it a quick run here. And so it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, George, but if you look, see, it was super fast. I barely even got to talk while that ran. And it seems to me like that's essentially, if I know that I'm not relying on anything other than CDI, it's just a faster, quicker feedback loop, takes even less time. Is that the idea behind doing this?
Yeah, so we had a few people saying like, yeah, I don't want to start like the web layer. I don't want to start the database layer. I don't want to start the Kafka layer. I just want to test like my let's say business logic. So yeah, that was the idea behind this whole thing.
Yeah, I'll run it again just so you can see how stinking. Actually, let's say I have Quarkus running in the background, so let's break this. Let's do this. Let's say, so what's howdy is not probably something that Fawn would say, right?
No. Next time we have George on, I'll get a list of books that I have that are more history related.
All right, so we broke that.
Lovely.
What? Am I still failing? Components provider not found. Oh well. That's what I get for grabbing the brand new feature. All right.
Yeah,
I don't think it's the feature that's broken.
Yeah. All right. No, that's what I get for it, right? I'm not used to having to know what happens when it goes wrong. All right. So that's not running. But anyway, if you look again, I'll just run it one more time. It is super, super fast to run this test. Like it's over instantaneously, right? So there you go. Like, you're not booting up all of Quarkus.
All right. Well, thank you very much, George, for joining us. If you see Max,
thank you.
Let him know. I'll text him later. Thanks,
Excellent.
Jeremy, for actually walking me through all the Quarkus testing for the novice part there. And hopefully people learned a lot today. We'll see you next month. Thank you again for joining us.
Bye.
Thanks.